Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday edition of the Fantasy Football Dojo. We are sponsored by the Ninja Legion. I'm Kirk.
I'm Mark.
And this is basically going to be our quick little, we say it's a half hour, 45 minutes, but who knows?
We're going to get the info in, and it'll be around 45 minutes or so.
We're hoping. But it's going to be our basically our notable injuries for the week. Guys who shined this past week in the NFL, guys who stunk it up pretty good. So let's get right to it.
We're going to help you make your team better here, since waiver wires are coming up on Wednesday in a lot of leagues.
What's the problem? We're all staring at him like, what's he saying?
We're good? All right.
Sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulties.
So we're going to go over some notable injuries. We're going to do a quick rundown of some of the game action over the weekend that's going to help you with your lineup and just overall help you with your waiver wire. Mike couldn't join us tonight, but he says hi, and we'll interject some things from him as well that he prepared. So what do we got up first here, Kirk?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing we need to look at is injuries for key players this week.
Yeah.
There was actually, in my eyes, there was about 5 or 6 that are really going to be pressing as far as what happened this week. To me, the biggest one is Eddie Lacy from Green Bay.
Yeah, Eddie Lacy's got a concussion. He is through the first part of the concussion protocol, but we won't know anything until probably mid to the end of the week as to whether he's going to play or not this week. But it doesn't sound like anything that's going to keep him out a long, long time.
But it does seem like he'll be a game time decision probably for week 2.
Yeah.
Maybe
Week 2 is going to be dicey.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd rather him probably not play just to make sure that he doesn't get walloped again, and then he's out for 6,
Right.
for 4 to 6 weeks. Next to that, I'd probably put Jordan Cameron. Pretty much 30 to 40% of what is supposed to be Cleveland's offense. He went out with a shoulder injury. He did not return and did not play the second half. They have him listed as day-to-day right now. But the big thing is they actually added another tight end, Jarrell Robinson, which is not a good sign. The fact that your tight end gets hurt and you say he's going to be fine, but you're picking up other players to take up his slack.
Well, you always need insurance, but Robinson's a guy that I don't think anybody's ever heard of, so I don't think we're expecting anything out of him, which means if Cameron doesn't play, you're not going to be picking up his backups.
That's very.
You'll
There are
just have
better
to
options.
find somebody else out there. And while we're on the subject, we do have some tight ends that have sprung up out of nowhere, like from last night. Our buddy Mr. TNL from the Giants catching a touchdown. I like this guy. I don't know about you. But
No, I do.
He's a massive target, and Eli Manning can't throw it more than 5 yards in front of his face. So,
He seemed like it seems like his hands are. He's pretty sure of them. So
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
he didn't really bobble anything. Didn't have to make a spectacular catch.
So that's an option if you have a tight end that's hurt like Jordan Cameron. That's
Speaking of hurt tight ends, also Jordan Reed from Washington. Even though I'm a Washington fan, I got to say I'm not a big fan of Jordan Reed. But he has had some decent games in the past. He had a couple last year. He is listed as week to week as well with a thumb and a hamstring injury.
Yeah, the hamstring's worse than the thumb, which is the injury he came in with. He's probably not going to play this week or the week after, and they're looking at him missing some time. They haven't said for sure. But
That's the phrase we keep hearing. He's going to miss some
he's gonna
time.
miss some
and
time.
Some is always in quotations. So God knows really what that is. And that would actually probably bring me to my first drop of the week. I would drop Jordan Reed. If you have him,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you want to hang on to him, if you have the bench space, see what he does maybe in a couple weeks, see if he comes back. But I don't think you're going to be hard-pressed to pick him back up later.
Yeah, I mean, I know the theory of likeliness of injury is always random, but this guy's been nothing but injured since he got into the league last year. So it's a pretty short sample size, but he's had 3 different pretty severe injuries.
Yep.
I don't know that you want to even stash him at this point. You've probably got better options at this juncture.
I would say you do. But again, that also brings me to my next ad. It's a potential ad. It's if you're desperate for a tight end, is his replacement Niles Paul.
Yeah, Niles Paul had 80-some yards in the game. They also have Logan Paulson that they seem to like.
And for some reason, if he comes back healthy, they like, for some reason, end zone targets to Leonard Hankerson, which drove me up a wall.
Yeah, which will drive you crazy because there's no consistency there. But, yeah, I guess Niles Paul is the guy that you'd want if you're going to be taking a Redskins tight end while Jordan Reed's out.
But that is... Honestly, it might not be it's a gamble, but they are playing Jacksonville this week, and they're about 3rd in giving up points to tight ends fantasy-wise based off of last year, and they look just as bad this year.
Yep.
So I think it's, again, if you're desperate for a tight end, give them a shot, but there are better options out there.
Yeah, Dwayne Allen from the Colts is available in a lot of leagues. I know everybody, is aware of Kobe Fleener, but Allen was out all last year. He's back. He's healthy. He caught a touchdown late in the game. If he's out there, he's a real good option if you're a Jordan Cameron owner. I think better than any of the other guys we've mentioned, except maybe not even the guy from the Giants. I'd rather have Allen, quite frankly. The guy's very athletic.
I'd agree with you.
So that's the tight end position's always a fun one because you don't really usually keep more than 2 on your roster, if that. But you can flip them and flop them all season long. So
the other big thing is Cleveland took a real hit this week, also with Ben Tate.
Ben Tate is injured currently. Yeah. Sorry, I'm partial to Terrence West. I'm a Towson alum, but
fair enough.
But our friend Isaiah Crowell scored 2 touchdowns. I don't think that's going to be a constant. I'd rather have West. I think he's the better player, and I think he'll have more opportunity with Tate out than Crowell will. Cleveland's offense isn't great, or at least it wasn't for a half, but they lit it up in the second half.
I tell you what, the second half they showed Dick LeBeau what can happen, and they showed that they're not as bad as we thought they'd be.
They made some adjustments. The whole first half was Brian Hoyer throwing off his back foot and falling down, but the second half they scored a bunch of points, so who knows what to think.
Say he's 24 unanswered.
Yeah.
Until the
I know we
minutes.
were watching the games at a reputable beverage serving establishment, and we both looked at each other and went, nobody's good.
No.
Nobody's good. Everybody's terrible. I don't
Very
understand.
true.
And then by the end of the game, we knew who was good and who wasn't. So you got to play 60 minutes in the NFL, of course. That's the old cliche. We got a lot of receivers that are just popping up out of nowhere.
It's very true.
That are in a lot of leagues that are, they're just available all over the place. I'm going to toot my own horn. Marcus Wheaton had 97 yards on 6 catches, including 2 on the final drive to set up the winning score.
I believe it was your friend that actually asked you, why did you draft?
Yeah, that was our only Twitter
Marcus
question.
Wheaton.
He referred to him as an object, which is always fun. So he didn't light the world on fire, but Marcus Wheaton should be owned in every league. Whether you start him or not is really depending on who you have. He's definitely a flex option. If he's in PPR, he's a little better.
PPR, he's a solid number 3. If you're 3 wideouts, he's a solid number 3.
Yeah, the target that they missed him on was a ball out of the end zone when Pittsburgh was backed up, and he went over the top and beat his man, and Roethlisberger overthrew him by 5 yards. So they look for him short, they look for him deep. He's their number 2 receiver behind Antonio Brown, so a good pickup.
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised after the sweet chin music that Antonio Brown laid down. Honestly, he'll probably be fined at the least.
I don't know. It didn't look that.
It looked. If you watch it again
know.
and again, it looked pretty. It looked like he meant to jump, but then the extension of the leg into his face.
I hope
is
they
what
go
got
with
me.
the no harm, no foul rule and don't
I
fine him.
agree.
He was laughing with the punter after the game. I don't think anybody took any offense.
I
to
do
it.
agree, but with the way the NFL's been going the last week or so, he could be suspended 4 games. He could not see anything.
It was
You don't
great
know.
when it was synced up to Jim Ross commentary. That was really great.
It keeps getting yanked
did
off the
see
internet
that.
because of the copyright
Copyrights.
from the NFL. But if you can find it, good old JR from WWE is
Oh,
dubbed
man.
over it. And
It's great.
It is one of the funniest things you will watch. It's
fantastic.
like DeAndre Jordan last year, the year before, dunking over another.
Dunking,
It was. Look it up, please. It's fantastic.
It's good times.
It is.
The other big receiver that everybody's focused on at this point for pickups is Kelvin Benjamin. I know in the leagues I'm in, he was drafted, but apparently there's stats out there showing that he wasn't drafted in the majority of leagues.
I was actually looking at ESPN today, and he
Yeah.
was only owned in 38% of all ESPN leagues.
That's criminal.
And
He
there's a
should
good
be owned
chance
in
he'll
every
be
league.
Rookie of the Year, Offensive
Well,
Rookie of the Year.
It's week 1, but he's definitely up there. He's their number one receiver. He's their number one receiver. He had 90 yards and a touchdown against a pretty decent defense with a backup quarterback throwing to him. Pick him up, start him.
So I don't see
the
his
guy's
targets.
going to play.
I don't see his targets dropping when Cam Newton comes back. He'll probably get the same number of looks, maybe more.
He's their best receiver, and it's not even close. So
By far, he's a big kid who's athletic.
yeah. So the big NFL story this week was obviously the Ray Rice release and the footage being released and all that. We're a fantasy show. We're not going to go on our soapbox about that. But it is notable in that we got to figure out who's going to play running back for the Baltimore Ravens at this point. The hot name right now is Justin Forsett, which I never thought I'd have those words come out.
No. We actually talked about him in our first show, saying if you draft him, you're a big daft idiot. And it looks to be, we're going to eat some words here.
The short-term relevancy is that if you need a running back, Forsett will play. I don't know what Bernard Pierce's role is at this point. He went from, penthouse to the outhouse, so to speak.
Say 2 years ago, Bernard Pierce looked as good, maybe if not better, than Ray Rice did as far as straight burst speed still with strength. They both looked like crap last year.
I know when we were watching the game, everybody thought he was hurt. He wasn't hurt. Pierce got benched.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a guy who's been on at least 3 or 4 NFL teams and hasn't stuck. So that should tell you all you really need to know. If you got to start Pierce, or if you got to start Ravens running back, Forsett's the guy. But I know Pittsburgh doesn't have a great defense, but it's going to be media central on Thursday night for the Thursday night matchup. I wouldn't go anywhere near Justin Forsett. I wouldn't really play hardly any Ravens except maybe Torrey Smith. And if you really want to go after Steve Smith Sr., feel free. But his big play was on a broken play. That's not going to happen every game. But
he did have, 2 drops?
At least.
2. It was at least 2 or 3.
At least 2. Everybody on that team dropped at least a pass or 2. It was ugly. Dennis Pitt is the only guy on that team that could catch that entire game.
And let's face it, we all kind of figured that he was going to be the cornerstone of that passing offense.
He had 10 catches. I mean, that's, if you're in a PPR league and you need a tight end and you took Pitta late in the draft, you're loving life right now.
10 catches for 84 yards?
Yeah, it was 83, 84 yards. He's Flacco's best buddy, and he's going to get a lot of looks. So I think out of the receiving options that the Ravens have, you could consider Torrey Smith the best option. I think, considering his position, Pitt is going to be a top 10 tight end. I don't think Smith is a top 10 wide receiver.
No, he's a week 3 at best.
The other big legal story was the possibility of reversing drug suspensions. Apparently, the NFL Players Association and the league are meeting to revamp the drug policy. If they do, it would get Wes Welker and Josh Gordon off the hook. If that happens, it's open season on Josh Gordon.
Honestly, if he hasn't been picked up in your league,
he probably has.
Yeah,
if
probably.
He hasn't, go grab him.
Honestly, I mean, if he's out there, try your best. If you're number 3 on the waiver wire, you're not going to get him. But try, do your best, because he is going to play in the NFL this year. I'm calling it now. He's going to play. I don't know if it's going to be week 2, week 3, week 4.
I don't even try and guess with this kind of stuff because I don't know what's going to happen. I had him in a couple of leagues and I ended up dropping him when they announced they upheld the suspension. I have no clue. I don't know what they're going to do. But it's an interesting story in that it could get him and Welker off the schneid. And Welker's actually been cleared to play if he's not suspended. So
true. One of the other big ads that I was looking at this week, I can't say it's a big ad because there's not a whole lot of other guys, but Andrew Hawkins, wide receiver for Cleveland. Yeah. Now that Jordan Cameron is hurt, he is going to be the number 1 target, let alone the number 1 receiver. He'll be the number 1 target all around.
Absolutely.
And Hoyer can sling the ball around. I mean, he has had games where he does look like a Brett Favre on a good day. He's also had games where he looks like Brett Favre on a bad day.
Yeah.
Hawkins
is a good PPR ad.
Say
I'm not so sure I'd like him all that much in a standard league, but in PPR he's going to catch a lot of balls and he's going to, he'll make some plays.
Honestly, I think he'll find
quick guy.
I think he'll find the end zone, quick slant route if they get in the red zone.
Can't
guarantee it, but the other one is if you're, say, in a 12 to 14 team league, because they're stupid, they are out there. I'm sorry. That's my personal opinion. It's too many teams. But if you are in desperate need for a PPR receiver, Donnie Avery in Kansas City. Just because Dwayne Bowe is still not there. And
Well, he's suspended for a game, so he'll be back depending on whether he's healthy or not. I don't think anybody really knows because they haven't really released much, but I don't have any reason to think he's injured, so I would assume Bowe would be back. But even still, Avery's a decent receiver. He'll get some play.
He'll probably
offense was non-existent. I mean,
it really was, but he'll probably be good for around 5 or 6 catches for probably 60 yards. So if you're desperate for
his roster filler, but if you got a guy that's hurt or 2 guys that are hurt or
you just
everybody that's hurt, then that's certainly an option. He's a professional receiver, as they say.
He gets paid to play football.
He gets paid to play football professionally.
But also, maybe a good bye week, maybe down the road.
Right.
Again, it's a maybe, but these are all projections.
Right.
One other thing that I wanted to bring up that we didn't get over is the only real receiver in Jacksonville, Cecil Shorts,
Right.
may return week 2. They're planning on running him on Tuesday, letting him try some sprints out. Again, he'd be a good chance for a flex wide receiver 3.
He's probably on a lot of teams. If he is, you should have held on to him. I wouldn't have dumped him. This brings up the always fun topic of Alan Hearns. God bless Alan Hearns, but I don't really think that I would give up a lot of waiver wire leverage to get him, nor would if you have a free agent budget, because a lot of leagues have that. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of money on the guy. He's a talented player, but he's on an offense that doesn't do a whole lot, and he's not going to be a starting receiver once Shorts gets healthy. So I think he wins your Kevin Ogletree award for gigantic week 1, and you don't hear too much from him again. I hope we do. He's an exciting player. He's a good player, but he's just in a not so great situation. Despite what they showed in the first 10 minutes, Jacksonville's not a great offense. So I think we all know that.
They haven't shown a great offense in
years,
almost coming up on 10 years now. It seems
ever since Mark Brunell was there.
Good old Mark Brunell.
Brunell.
Redskins represented.
It should be mentioned that in our Ninja Legion Fantasy League, all 3 of the hosts won. But your man Kirk here is the second leading scorer. I was number 1. Sorry.
I thought Mike had more points than I did this week.
Did he? Oh, okay.
I could have swore. I think I was the number.
No, you were number 4
of the hosts. I was 3.
You were third of the host, but that's okay. You won anyway. So
that's all that matters.
In case
to me.
anybody's wondering, I don't think anybody is, but in case anybody's wondering, I put the large beat down on Trash Talking Justin, if you remember him from the draft episode.
Our league is open to public view. Please go look at it because it is just an epic.
It's listed as the No Justice League if anybody's curious, but it's the league that we drafted on the podcast. We're pretty happy with it, but and then all of our local teams, 2 of the 3 local teams lost. My Falcons won. Thanks. Yeah. That's how fickle I am. I just abandoned the Ravens for the Falcons after 1 week. Since I have to burn all my Ray Rice jerseys now, what am I going to do?
I keep hearing
I have
a rumor.
no outfits left, so
I keep hearing a rumor that they're gonna they may be doing a jersey exchange.
Jersey exchange. That's not a rumor actually. They just haven't released where you can do it.
They did confirm it's going to happen.
Confirm it's going to happen. So I guess I'll hold on to them. They won't go to the Goodwill yet. So let's take a quick look at what happened over the weekend. Any observations or any advice for the owners out there as far as what you saw?
Be careful, honestly. I don't trust yet. Well, the big thing I saw, don't trust San Francisco's D the way they looked this week. I think this week was a special case just because Jay Cutler was a little bit off. Not Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
Tony Romo.
Dallas was a disaster.
He was off more than usual. 3 straight picks, and 3 straight drives. One of which turned into a pick 6.
Yeah.
Or no, that was the fumble
recovery. The DeMarco Murray fumble recovery.
Right, which is kind of rare. I mean, he's fumbled.
He's usually pretty sure-handed.
Normally he is.
But it should be noted, and Kirk makes a good point. Basically, it's week 1. Don't go nuts. Stick with your guys. Des Bryant had a bad game. It's not going to happen every week. Don't go flipping, flopping your lineup. Don't go making a bunch of crazy trades. You'll just regret it. These things all regress to the mean, and the good players are going to be good, and the not so great players that went nuts are not going to do it every week. So
Say,
it's tempting to go out there and tinker, but I wouldn't too much.
Unless you get a massive trade offer, don't worry about getting rid of Jamal Charles.
Oh,
even
yeah,
though the offense looked weak,
Oh God, he was.
he
awful.
is going to be the backbone of that offense for pretty much the entire year, unless they make some brilliant trades themselves. But hang on to him. Obviously, I mean, he's still ranked the number 3 running back in the league, number 2, number 3 at this point for me.
He's that entire offense. He's definitely a volume play, and you know, I have him in one league. Mike and I share him in a league. We have a shared team, and we took him first overall because it's a PPR league. What are you going to do? Like you said, unless you get offered some massive haul from somebody, there's no point in trading.
Honestly, I would say the only trade I would entertain is Megatron and
Megatron and a sweetener.
It'd have to be a small sweetener, but I think it would, 2 packs of Sweet and Low, I'd probably be in. That's also if you're desperate for a receiver, which I'm wishing for maybe a strong number 1. I mean, granted, I do have Julio Jones, but he's going to be fighting for looks all year with Roddy White.
Sure.
So, I mean, they're easily a flip-floppable of who's number 1 in Atlanta because obviously Roddy got more looks than Julio did this past week.
Yeah, and I think that offense is pretty much back to where it was in 2012. Everybody's healthy. They're going to score a lot of points, and their defense isn't so great. So
they're going to have to score.
They're going to have to score a lot of points. That's exactly what happened. I mean, geez, Devin Hester had 90 yards. That's wow. I was blown away.
I thought he was on the Bears.
I'm a fan of the team. It's craziness. All the backup running backs did great. Everybody on that team did wonderfully. Do I think Matt Ryan's going to throw for 450 yards every week? No, but I think he can easily be a top 7 or 8 quarterback.
Say if you have him, unless you're a miracle to have drafted somebody else with him, he's a start every week.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd start him on a bye week over RG3.
Oh, easily. I started on RG3 on a weekly basis. RG3 looked horrendous. I mean, you're the Redskins fan. You paid attention to it more than I did, but it was check down city.
The beverage establishment we were in was not playing it on any screen.
Chose not to play the Redskins.
Except for the very back corner by the bathrooms.
It was a Ravens establishment.
Very true. Very
makes
true.
Sense.
But I went back and looked at the stats, looked at some of the highlights, and it was just horrendous, back to front, up and down.
It was dink and dunk town.
And they didn't even do that very well.
No.
Let's see here. Oh, one thing I did want to touch. There's our couple questionable guys for this coming week. A couple of them are kind of big. I mean, Gronk is still he's going to listen as questionable for 10 weeks straight because he's a Patriot.
Yeah.
Just like Tom Brady still listed as questionable, and he had a pretty good game. So take that with a grain of salt. Cam Newton, still not sure if he's going to play week 2. That's a biggie.
Yeah, that's a biggie. If Newton plays, you pretty much want to play him, but who knows if he's going to until later in the week. What I had heard reported was that he could have played, but they held him out because it's a long season, which makes sense. I mean, that's they won the game, so you can't argue with it. They stole one.
And honestly, I mean, God, I don't remember his backup's name.
Derek Anderson.
Thank you. He honestly didn't look bad.
He was okay. Yeah, he was all right
for a fill-in role. Just didn't look bad. But to me, the biggest injury that is still questionable is Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeffrey missed a lot of the second half with a hamstring. We're not going to know a whole lot about these guys until later in the week. We're going to preview all the games on Sunday before the games, but that Cam Newton matchup is against the Lions, which that helps. I know the Lions look great on Monday night, but their defense isn't very good.
No, again, they're falling into the same list as the Cowboys and the Falcons.
Nobody falls into the same list with the Cowboys. That team's miserable, but
that's very true. But
their defense is. Let's put it that way.
What defense? Yeah, thank you.
We
We need a little drum set back.
need a little drum set back here.
Couple other quick ones I'm going to run down. No real information too much about him. Garrett Graham, tight end for Houston. He's got a nagging back injury. Antonio Gates, San Diego. This guy's been there for 30 years.
I watched that game last night, man. Gates played some old man basketball football, man. I tell you what. He knew all the slick moves, and he knew where to put his body, and he couldn't run worth a day. He was running like it was rocks in his shoes. But he led the team in receiving yardage, so, who can complain?
I say he still put up a decent game.
That reminds me, another big waiver pickup that you could go for is Malcolm Floyd. Floyd had a touchdown last night. He had one of the more horrendous back injuries last year, missed the whole year, but he's back. He's completely healthy. Rivers loves him, and he's not owned in a lot of leagues. A lot of people forgot about it. He slipped under the radar since he had no stats from last year.
So he was the number one man in San Diego before he got hurt.
Yeah, he was. He was the number one guy, and then Keenan Allen came in.
Yeah.
Does that affect Keenan Allen's value? I don't think so. I think that offense is good enough to support two good receivers and an old creaky tight end.
An old creaky tight end that still seems to find the end zone.
Absolutely. So I wouldn't worry if you're a Keenan Allen owner. He didn't do a whole lot last night, but he had a couple plays that, if something breaks the right way, he could have made some big plays out of him. So
remember how long it took Gates to take the spot from Algie Crumpler?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
It took a couple years for Gates to take over. I mean, he was clearly the better choice.
Yep.
Couple other small ones. Well, not so much small for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but Toby Gerhart. He's got a sprained ankle. He's been limited in practice all this week. Pretty good chance he's probably not going to play week 2 unless they'll just shoot him up and tape him up, and he'll go out there and suffer through it.
Which is a bummer because they play your Redskins.
Yeah.
Which means he probably could have done something. I would not advise either of those backups, Jordan Todman and Denard Robinson.
No.
They're probably going to split carries. Neither one of them is all that proven. Todman had some run a year or two ago, but I wouldn't invest anything in either one of those guys.
I do expect the Redskins offense to bounce back a little bit this week because it is Jacksonville, and they're going to be playing catch-up the whole week, so they'll probably they might get 8 touches apiece. And, just stay away. The other two that I have, Doug Martin for Tampa Bay. He's got a knee injury.
Oh, yeah, you see my face when you say Doug Martin?
I know.
This is what my face does involuntarily when you say Doug Martin.
Again,
I don't know what to do with Doug Martin. I would not play him, especially if he's hurt, obviously.
No,
but
absolutely
even
not.
when he comes back, I don't know what to do with the guy. If you went out on a limb and took him high in your draft, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say, but he is no longer the muscle hamster. He is just the hamster at this point. I feel bad, nothing against him personally, but jeez, man.
Say the wheel's still turning, but the hamster looks like he might be dead.
He's assassinating fantasy teams nationwide. I don't even know what to do with him. But again, they've got backups. Bobby Rainey. Everybody loves some Bobby Rainey. He's undersized. He had a pretty good stint last year as the starter. If you need a guy and you're desperate, go ahead.
Again, this is deep
This
leagues.
is deep stuff. Trying to look to see who Tampa plays.
Oh, I didn't even bother to look. I'm not gonna lie.
Let's see.
While he's looking that up, the other big one is Michael Crabtree, San Francisco wide receiver. Still got that calf injury.
Yeah,
which I've seen more calf injuries this year than I think I've ever had in my life.
A lot of calf tweaks. Yeah, very weird.
When
Crabtree played, I don't know that I would bench him unless I hear that it got worse.
I'd say unless they say he's gonna be out, I'd say play him. He's listed as questionable. He's more likely probable. But when I was growing up playing football, a calf injury was known as a cramp.
Yeah.
But apparently now cramps.
Tampa, by the way, playing the Rams this weekend. Not a great start against that defense to begin with.
Yeah.
A defensive line that held Purple Jesus to 75 yards rushing. But gave up a bunch of rushing yards to my lay it on the line pick. That's Cordero Patterson. Everybody likes him some Cordell Patterson.
That's true. I forgot about the late on the line picks.
Lay it on the line picks.
Yours
mine was Patterson.
And I'd say I'd say it paid off.
I did okay. The big question about Patterson is he only got 5 targets in the passing game. Here's how I look at this, and maybe I'm just rationalizing because I have him on a bunch of teams. If your average normal number 1 receiver gets 10 targets, he got 5 in the passing game, and he got I think 3 or 4 carries.
I think it was 4 carries.
That's 9 targets. I count the rushes as targets for him because they're specifically designed to get him to the outside.
You can't look at him
Percy Harvin.
You can't look at him as targets. You got to look at his chances.
You're right. It's opportunities to score, which he did on a 67-yard sweep.
If you didn't see it, it was brilliant.
It was a crazy run, but that's what he's capable of. So the Norvization of the Minnesota offense is fantastic.
The Norv sighting.
The North, yeah, they looked pretty good.
Speaking of which, I bet you there's probably 30 to 40% of teams had Percy Harvin sitting on their bench this past week.
That's possible.
I guarantee he was probably not much higher than a 65% start.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have him on any of my teams, but if I had him, I sure would have played him because, gosh darn it, if I'm going to have him on my team, I always will play him while he's healthy because I'm not going to get him for the whole season probably.
The chances are, though, at first quarter, he's no longer healthy.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's the only problem with Percy Harvin.
But no, Patterson's the same type of player as Harvin, although from what I've seen, he's bigger than Harvin. He might be faster.
Especially now.
He's a big play guy. He's going to be a little hit or miss. He's going to have some games that are just, hit or miss. But, that's the way it goes. But he makes big plays. If you've got any sort of bonuses for long plays in your league, he's one guy to especially target.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think he's also went from a situational start, maybe in wide receiver 3, to...
Oh, you got to start him every week.
Yeah, absolutely at this point.
He's a 2. He's a solid 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
He actually reminds me a lot of your late on the line pick, T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah. I didn't quite pay off.
Well,
for me.
what are you gonna do? Hilton got some targets. He made 4 catches, 40-some yards. I mean, it's not a tragedy. The guy didn't have a huge game, but
thank God I didn't need a huge game from him because he was my last guy to play, and I
and you had already blown out your opponent.
Oh no, actually before that it was closer than it should have been going into Sunday night.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Actually, this week coming up in our league itself, granted, take projected stats for what they are. I mean, they're like opinions, and we all know how that saying ends. But really, no one is set up to really set the world on fire. All the games are pretty close, and it's kind of funny because all the lowest projections are playing each other this week.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. It's amazing how it turned out.
Yeah. So, well, it looks like we're coming up on about 20-25 minutes here. What do we got? We're gonna wrap it on up here. It looks like, I guess. What do we got left on the docket here?
Honestly, I mean, we kind of went over everything we wanted to. Just went over the big injuries, the small injuries, the guys you just obviously want to drop after week 1, and it's pretty much just the 3 that we talked about. Well, actually, I didn't get to say it. Honestly, go ahead and drop Bernard Pierce from the Ravens as well.
Yeah.
He just looks out of shape, and he just doesn't. He looks like he doesn't care.
It's funny because the more things change, the more they stay the same. I've seen that Ravens game about 40 times in the past 10 years.
Oh, easily.
It's the old bend but don't break defense. Give up a bunch of field goals, have one miracle play, give it right back, and then peter out coming down the last drive. That's how they lose. That's their MO. They don't lose a lot, but when they do, that's how it works. So.
Oh, and I'm speaking strictly to Paul, really, from our league. But to any of you Joe Flacco owners out there that decided to start the guy that made, in his opinion, his worst football play
dumbest,
of his
actually. That was the quote.
Dumbest.
That was his dumbest play as a football player ever, when he ran around until time ran out in the first half instead of throwing the ball away or getting down so they could kick a field goal. Surprisingly, no, I didn't even realize this until I looked at the stats. He actually had a decent fantasy game just in pure volume.
Yeah.
He had over 300 yards. He only had 1 pick.
Well, he threw the ball 60 times. I'm sorry. I can play in the NFL, throw the ball 62 times, and probably get close to 4 yards a pass.
It was crazy.
5 yards a pass. Because you got to figure he averaged 5 yards a completion. 5.
Yeah.
5. I'm going to say it again. 5.
It was dinking and dunking his way down the field. Absolutely.
Honestly, no, it really wasn't. Because the completions he was making were for 15 and 20 yards.
Oh,
that he threw
true.
40.
You also have the 80 yards.
The one Steve Smith catch.
The Steve Smith.
Which honestly
Ice Up Sun play of the week.
Which really should have been called back because that stiff arm was a horrid face mask. It really. Go back and watch it again. He literally grabs him by the grill and yanks him to the ground. It was impressive. It was impressive strength for a guy who, according to the mean tweets on Jimmy Kimmel, looks 50.
He's 50. I'm
but,
35.
But it was horrendous. And actually, I was greatly surprised at the referees letting...
Yeah, we'll wrap up.
Honestly, I was really surprised that the referees really just letting him play.
Yeah.
It wasn't nearly as bad.
I'll do the closeout since you did
the fine with Macer. That's actually a point I was going to bring up is... people were worried about what defenses are going to do.
historically never played before.
Hey, we're back.
And we're back. Thanks, technical team. All right, so we've got enough information here. We're going to be back at noon on Sunday to do the pregame like we did this past week.
We're not
noon-ish, yeah, somewhere in there, but we'll be on. And everything's archived, so if you want to go back and listen to anything to see how smart or how dumb we were, feel free. Mike will be back. Yeah, more the latter, typically. So Mike will be back on Sunday with Kirk and I. For Kirk, thanks for tuning in, and that's the Fantasy Football Dojo for Week 1.
See you, everybody.